Hi, my name is Kris Thomas, and I want to welcome you to the third session of Coffee with Kris. Today I have with me a special young lady. Her name is Andrea Beasley. I met Andrea about 3 years ago at church. When I decided to start writing a book, God laid people on my heart and I call it divine appointments. He put her in my path at church, and I remember one day we were at an event and I didn't really know her, and he said, listen to what she has to say. And it was the same time I was getting the idea to have testimonies in my book. And so I took Andrea to lunch and said, okay, this is going to sound crazy, but I'm an author and I feel like I'm supposed to share your story. And I was expecting her to say, are you crazy? But instead she said it was funny because God had been speaking to her heart at the same time about sharing her story. Andrea is also on the cover of the book, Living Free. And since we have done that project together, she has become a very dear friend of mine. And so now I'd like to introduce you to Andrea, and she's going to share her story with you. So Andrea, I would just like to start, I know your story, and we've sat and talked like this over coffee for hours on end without a camera. And we've had some amazing talks, and I just think that there's things that people out there need to know and need to hear who have been through what you've been through. So I think we're going to start, instead of starting at the beginning, let's start about what your life was like before you went to Mercy Ministries. What was your state of mind? What was life like for you then?
Very broken. I was just the epitome of a broken person, really. I was very suicidal, very depressed, on a lot of medications, very just a broken person inside and out.
So when you say you were on a lot of medications, what type of medications?
I was on antidepressants, anxiety meds, on antipsychotics, sleeping meds, you name it, I was on it.
And so why did they have you on those meds? What were they labeling you?
They labeled me manic depressive, I had panic disorder, I had bipolar disorder, dissociative disorder, a lot of disorders.
Okay, and I remember you telling me about one time sitting on the front porch. Can you tell me about that, just to give people an idea of what your state of mind was at that time?
Yeah, so a couple weeks prior to going to the hospital, because I was hospitalized eventually for suicide and trying to take my life. Weeks prior, I was sitting outside on a porch and I was smoking, and I just remember feeling very hopeless. Like, I had tried church up to this point. Like, for a while I had tried the whole party scene and drugs and alcohol, and then when I got to church when I was 17, I tried that and I thought that would fix me. So now here I am at the house of a woman who went to my church, and they couldn't fix me, and I was just at the end of my rope. So I'm sitting outside, and I just remember crying and looking up to the sky and saying, like, Lord, like, I need your help. I can't live this way anymore. And I actually took my cigarette and put it out on my arm. And I remember thinking, like, I can't even feel that. Like, now I'm at the point of being completely numb. Like, I can't even feel putting a cigarette out on my arm. And so I proceeded to put it out, and then I would light it back up and put it out until my arm was completely burned up, and I switched arms, and 2 weeks after that I was hospitalized.
Can you tell me about that night that you decided you were going to take your life?
Yeah, it actually was morning time, and I had woke up, and I was staying with a woman from church, like I said, and so she couldn't help me, and I was becoming very, very deep in depression and suicide because she couldn't. And so I woke up and I texted her and I said, I just remember feeling like this darkness, like when I woke up, complete darkness. And I texted her and I said, can you come get me? Can you come get me today? And she was like, not today, Andrea. Like, I've got things I gotta do. And I was like, well, I can't breathe. Like, I need you to come save me, because I was ultimately looking for her and other people to take me out of this depression that I was in. And she said, we've got things going on as a family tonight, like I can't pick you up. And so I was like, well, then I can't live my life like this anymore. And so it was very early in the day, and I went outside and I smoked a cigarette. That's just my thing. And then I came back in and went up to my room, and that's when I poured out all my pills because I was on so many different medications. And as I sat there, I just remember feeling such darkness and such torment in my mind, and telling me to take my own life. And it was as if I could almost feel even the enemy in my room, like waiting. Like they were waiting. All of heaven and hell, I felt like were waiting at that moment to see what my decision would be. And I poured out the pills, and I had hung up on the lady because I called her, and at that moment, so I poured out all the pills out on my bed, and I remember looking, and I was like, this is it. And as I scooped them all up to put them up to my mouth, that's when my phone rang. And it was her, and it startled me as if somebody walked in my room. And I ran over and picked up the phone, and she said, don't you ever hang up on me again. And I was like, I want to kill myself. Screaming at her on the phone, you've got to help me, somebody help me, this is the end for me. And she talked me into calling my mom, and so my mom transported me to the hospital, and I was there for 5 days.
Okay, and then so you went to doing psych ward, is that what you said?
I was in a psych ward, and the thing about that was even too is they couldn't help me either, so they labeled it, instead of looking at my past and things that I've been through, they were saying, it's your medication. So it was the antidepressant that I was on was making me suicidal. They never went any deeper. They would ask questions about things you've been through in your life, but it was very surfacey. Nobody wanted to help me, but I had deep issues in my core that needed to be uprooted, and instead they said it was my meds that were making me suicidal. So they kept me there to switch me to another antidepressant in that program.
And that antidepressant didn't help?
No.
No. Okay, so since you said they were talking to you on the surface about medicine and just thinking that a different medicine would help, and they never tried to get to the root of the problem, is it okay if we talk about the root now?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so can you just talk then to me a little bit about the abuse that you went through as a child?
Sure. So when I was 5 years old, I had met my dad for the first time, my biological dad. He came up to me in a drunken stupor outside in my neighborhood and told me that he was my dad. So my mom never really wanted me to be around him because he was an alcoholic, which was fine for me up until that point because I did have my grandma's love and my mom's love. I never really felt that void, but there were times that I remember seeing my friends play with their dads and wishing that I had a dad in my life. But like I said, with my mom, I loved my mom. My mom loved me. That was enough for me at the time. And then she ended up meeting a man when I was 6. He had actually come in my life when I met my biological dad. And I remember when my dad came up to me outside and said that, I went inside and my mom said, if you want to see him, you're able to do so. But she had just met Eddie, and she was planning on getting married to Eddie, and Eddie said to me, I want to be your dad. I will be that for you. I will take care of you and whatever. So I was I made the decision not to see my dad, and I thought, this was going to be my chance at having a dad. Unfortunately, that was not the case. He, soon after they got married, he started coming into my room at night to molest me. And over time, it became worse and worse.
And I know you said that you used to get scared and you would You used to tuck your blanket in.
Yeah.
Tell us about the blanket.
Yeah, so I had this blanket, this comforter on my bed, and I kept it for a lot of years as kind of like a comfort thing. But I would lay in my bed at night and I would see a shadow at my door. And I remember my sister shared the same room with me, so I remember thinking, well, I've got to like catch his attention somehow so that it would be shifted towards me. So even at that young of an age, I was trying to take the brunt of it, I didn't want my sister to have to endure it, and so I would move or something to like catch his attention over to my side of the bed, but then I would still act as though I was just sleeping, like moving in my sleep. So he would come over and generally put his hand like underneath my blanket, and so I learned like that that's what he would do. I picked up on his things, so I started tucking my blanket underneath my legs at night so that, when he would come in, he would have to rip the blanket out so that he'd be afraid of waking me, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes. And how did that make you feel? How did that affect you at school or about your body? I mean, how did that...
There's a lot of different ways that it affected me. I think when we finally got away from him, because that lasted for probably about 2 years or so, when we ended up getting away from him, I remember just feeling like, okay, I'm going to move on the rest of my life. Like, we're going to put that in the past. Like, but it left me very, very scarred. Like, I would take 3 showers a day. Like, I never felt like I was clean enough. Like, I remember sitting in the shower and covering myself. Like, we would have rags in the shower and I wouldn't even want to see like my own body parts. Like, I would just put them over my body parts when I took a bath or whatever, like just so shame-filled about the things that had happened to me, and I thought that it was my fault or there was something in me that somehow attracted him to me, because I knew at that age that it was not normal, and but I felt like there was a voice telling me when I would take showers, you're the one that's not normal. Like, what is it about you? Like, you've obviously done something to attract him to you. And so I remember self-hatred even as a child, like not wanting to live in my own skin. And I remember going to school. Like, when I started school, that's when I would look at other girls around me and they seemed carefree to me. And I remember thinking, if I could just switch into their bodies, is like what I was thinking, and think like they think and be comfortable with who I am, like that would be so great. Because I didn't want other people to know I didn't feel that way about myself, so I acted out in such a way that they would never guess that I was feeling that way about myself, because I thought if they thought that, then it would confirm, that I was not normal.
Right. And so I have heard you mention to me before attention seeking. How did it affect you as you got older then?
Attention seeking, I was very attention seeking. Whether or not it was negative attention, like that didn't matter to me. So, as I got older, I would lie about different things. Like, I felt like nobody even really knew me, because I was constantly portraying to be someone I wasn't, or acting a certain way. Like, I looked at other girls and I'd be like, okay, they seem popular, they seem cool, or they seem like they have it all together, so I would even walk like them. Like, even if a girl, I remember this girl in 7th grade, she walked bow-legged, and like she was popular, so I was like, well, maybe like I can walk bow-legged, like, just goofy things, all in an attempt to, feel better about myself and to feel like I was worth something, I guess.
You were trying to figure out who you were.
Yeah, I was so lost in identity, so lost.
Okay. Yes.
And I think that had something to do as far as too, like in my teenage years, the depression, because something in me has always really loved truth. Like, I've always loved truth, and I've always known, like deep in my heart, like I was portraying to be somebody that I wasn't. And so it was very exhausting to me to try and keep up an image that I knew was not the real me. I so badly wanted to be myself, but I was afraid of rejection, I guess.
You were afraid that if you were your authentic self, that you would be rejected.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you shared with me the day that we met and I asked you to write your book, you shared with me the moments that led you up to going to Mercy and about the party and how you woke up and said, this is enough. Can you share that?
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't really the moment that led me up to Mercy, but that was in the party scene, because it went from broken from, I went through the abuse and then I got out, so I was still pretty young, the 4th, 5th grade, so for 4th to 7th grade, was just so lost, trying to be someone else, and then from 9th grade on, it was more about the party scene, so I was just okay, let me drink with my friends, but that quickly turned into oh my gosh, when I drink, my mind stopped spinning because I was so tormented all the time. So I began drinking. I did some drugs for a while, but it wasn't really anything heavy, and then I started when I was 16 on the actual medication. So they're in between in this party scene before I got to 19 and wanted to kill myself. In the party scene, I remember waking up, because I'm a very clean person, everything very clean and in order, and I remember waking up at this party, and the next morning there's people just laying everywhere, and it was this smoky, nasty, I woke up on this nasty carpet that anybody knows me knows that's not my life. And so I sat up and I looked around at all the people in the smoke-filled room, and I had nasty breath from smoking and smoking weed all night, and I was just what has happened? So how did I get to this point? I knew I had hit such a bottom, and I remember getting up and walking away, and I felt, even though I wasn't living for the Lord, I knew of the Lord, from my childhood and going to church. And I felt this drawing, in that moment, the Lord saying, it was almost like He tapped me on the shoulder, have you had enough yet? Or something, or, is this, you see this, are you done? And I remember being irate and even looking up, and I was no, you listen to me. I don't want anything to do with you. Please leave me alone. In my sin, please leave me alone. Ultimately, because I thought God was the author of my pain. In one sense, I knew that He was good. I would pray to Him as a child. I really loved Him as a kid. But somewhere, in the midst of being abused and all the chaos, I remember I kind of gave up that God is good mentality, and more so, if He's so good, and so powerful, He could have stopped these things that were happening to me, and He didn't. And so I didn't really want Him close enough to even interfere in my life, no matter how bad it really was.
Okay, so I feel for those watching the video, I feel there's going to be a lot of people out there that are here at this spot. I hear a lot of people say, if God is good, why do these things happen? How could He let me go through the abuse or the torment? So that's where I want to get your perspective. I could talk about it, but you've been there. How did you find the Lord, and how has He healed you? So if you just talk about whatever you want, but either about how you got drawn to Mercy, or what you found out on your journey, and how He's became the Father you didn't have. But I just want you to speak about the Lord now.
Okay. Well, I went into a program, so finally, after I was hospitalized, I was okay, I remember sitting in the hospital with, schizophrenic Tina, and thinking, this has got to be the turning point for me. I had hit the lowest of lows, being at the psych ward. That was just okay, enough is enough. and I truly, desperately wanted change. And I remember getting out of the hospital. I was back up to summer, so I was hospitalized in September. It probably was June when I had been out one night and I came home late and I was watching TV and I was flipping through the channels and I had seen CeCe Winans talking about a place called Mercy Ministries with Nancy Alcorn, the founder. And Nancy was giving testimony of a girl who had been abused, suicidal, lost identity, and it was like she was reading my life, and I'm like, okay, like, and then she talked about how free she was. I'm like, no way, because I'm like on all these medications, like, there's no way you can truly be free. Like, you might be able to not be suicidal, but like, that just seems so crazy to me. But it was a Christ-centered facility and program, and that kind of attracted me to it as well. And I just was like, that I was like, could that really happen? And I remember shutting off the TV, and I was just like, oh, like, they said the closest home was in Nashville. I'm like, I can't leave my house, my family, even though it all was so broken. You get these excuses, like, I can't leave in the midst of all this wanting to kill myself. But I turned the TV off, and I went out with my friend for the night, and we came back, and I remember her even, let's watch TV. So I know it was not on the same channel when we went to bed. Well, she woke up and went to work, and I turned on my TV, and it was on that channel on the rerun, like the same thing, Nancy speaking. And I'm like, what? Like, I knew I was being drawn to this place, and so I thought, okay, like, still self-talking, like, I won't go there, but like, maybe I'll just check into it. So for months and months, up until, even I was in the hospital, I would stay up at night reading testimony after testimony after testimony of girls that had been through the program and had come out free. And it so interested me because I felt like nobody really around me was telling me that I could be completely free. So it was the Lord intervening, even all through that chaos and being suicidal. Like, I could not see He was working and moving in my life in the midst of it. And so after I was hospitalized, that was my bottom, and I said, okay, I'll try this place, like, I'll apply to this place. So I did, and I got accepted. I walked through the doors on May 16th, 2011, and I'd like to say, like, as soon as I walked in, it was this miraculous, like, change, because it wasn't. For the first 3 months, I fought being there. I said I was going home every day, like, you people aren't helping me. And I remember being so optimistic about the program that I was on meds before I went, and I was like, I'm getting myself off of all these meds, and then when I go, like, I'll just be free. And I remember, like, a couple counseling sessions in, my counselor's like, because I had disassociation, so she would bring up something hard, and I would just be like, and she'd be like, Andrea, like, and I would feel like it was leaving my body. So I remember saying, we think that it would be good to put you on meds, while we work through things in counseling. I was just like, you guys can't help me, like, you're trying to put me back on meds. But it was a combination of the counseling and the medication just to get me through. But for 3 months I fought it. I fought it, and then they all sat me down, and the staff, and they're just like, why are you there? Like, the Lord wants to heal your life. Like, you've got to start opening up and talking. Like, you've got to start doing the things we're asking you to do, like reading your Bible, and because the whole thing is centered around the Lord. And so I was so terrified of letting God into the things in my heart, because I did not want to face Andrea. Like, I had built up this personality, this person that I thought was like safe and like comfortable and people would look at. It was very much deception, obviously, because I was so broken. People were looking at me seeing a psycho, and I'm like thinking that I had this like great personality and all this stuff built up. So I was terrified of facing myself. That was a big reason I had talk in counseling, because I knew once I opened it up, it was going to be bad. And so my counselor was like, why don't you start off by giving me some of your journals? And so I did that, and as I began to open up to her, they incorporated the Lord into it. And so we would sit in silence, and she'd say, ask the Lord where he was. Ask God where he was in these times. And I remember just saying, where were you? What were you doing while these things were happening to me? And he would answer me so quickly, and I just remember being so captivated. I fell in love with a God that cared, and that was intimate and so personal. He was so personal to me, and him telling me, how angry he was, and men have free will, and it's a beautiful thing, but sometimes it can be a bad thing. And my abuser took advantage of that free will. It wasn't God's will for my life, but that's when the Lord told me, begin to show me, you've been through these horrible things, Andrea, but I can make it so much greater than it ever could have been if you would just give it over to me. And the more personal he got, and the closer he came, it touched my heart, and the more I fell in love. So as I began to heal, the medication started dying off. I remember actually having a panic attack because it made me feel like I was in a different world instead of putting me in reality. And so I was like, I gotta get rid of these things. They're giving me anxiety, and he has been good to me ever since. I graduated the program, and like I said, things have not always been easy. It's been very difficult. I got out of the program, and I decided I was going to live my life completely 100% for the Lord, because he gave me life. I was like, you gave me life, so I'll give it back to you. And I lost all my friends, and came home really to nothing. I didn't have a car, a job. I had a place to live, but just wasn't good at the time. And so I moved out on my own, and I was very isolated for a while. And it was in that time even more so than Mercy, because Mercy has staff at your disposal anytime. You can get input, prayer, anything like that. And I came home, and the Lord had me in such a bubble of protection, and it was just me and him. And I didn't feel I wasn't sad and didn't cry because I didn't have anyone necessarily. It was just such a season of healing, just me and the Lord one-on-one. And he would speak to me, and as I would surrender to him about, people would call me you want to come out? And one time I did, and this is an instance that I like telling because it's just the Lord and his mercy. My friend was getting married, and I went to her wedding. It was a Friday night, and the reception was afterwards, and I was sitting there with a group of girls, a really, really fun group of girls. They're all great girls, all of her friends. And this guy came up to me, and he put down several beers in front of me, probably 7 or 8 of them. And he was like, drink, and I was like, I don't drink, no thank you. And the pressure, they just kept pressuring, drink, and all the girls are dancing, come on, Andrea, it's Friday night, And I just remember feeling I gotta get out of here, you know, and I was 20 or so, 21. And I remember sitting there thinking, well, if I did drink this, like, I have my own apartment, like, nobody would ever know. Like, I could go home, take a shower, go to bed, like, nobody would ever know. And, but that's not what it was about for me. Like, I was like, that's not what it's about. Like, I love the Lord. I want to do, you know, what He's asked me to do, be of sober, you know, just do ultimately what He wants me to do. And so I asked a girl, I said, can you take me home? And she's like, yeah, sure. So she dropped me off, bye, like, peeled out with her boyfriend. They went to go back to, like, have a good time. And I walked in and I looked over at the microwave and it said, like, 8:43 or something. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me, because it was a Friday night and, like, I didn't have any friends. And I remember, like, falling face down into the couch and just crying, like, Lord, like, it's Friday, I have no friends and no life, like, you know. And I remember getting up and saying, well, you know, that's not what it's about anymore. Like, I want to be so intimate and close with you. Like, I will live as holy as I need to. That's what it was about for me. And so I got down on my knees, I opened up my window, and if people could see into my apartment or hear me with my window, then they probably thought it was crazy. But I just was talking to him like he was there. And it was in those times that, you know, even though it hurt and it was hard for me because I was young and everybody else around me was doing different things, it meant the world to me that God would spend that time with me and use that time to teach me about Him. And I fell in love with His Word. Like, I could not get enough of His Word, Him speaking to me through the Word, and I was obsessed. And it's left me changed. It's renewed my mind, His Word, especially speaking, reading His Word. Is what's really changed me.
Yes, and I think because we've been friends for a few years now, you know, I often wondered, because I've met girls who they have such a desire in their heart, girls and boys both, men and women both, who have a desire in their heart to want to change, to want the peace that you have now. And some make it and some don't. And I've always tried to figure out what that difference is so that I could help others, right? Help the ones that didn't make it. And for me, what I think I'm learning after talking to people like you who have made it is you have that discipline. You want to be well and you want to follow the Lord more than you want to party or the approval of others. Like, you found your identity in Christ, so you don't need others to validate you. You don't need a long list of friends to validate you. You don't need a party to be the funny girl to validate you. You followed the Lord and stayed disciplined, and then He's restored what you lost. You have friends around you now on the same journey.
Well, yeah, for sure. And it wasn't even just about discipline for me, it was about relationship. And I think that's a lot of times, like, the difference in people and you know, they feel like they have to do something. If you feel like you have to do something or spend time with someone, it's completely miserable. Like, we all know that, you know, that friend you want to ditch on all the time. Because then when you're around them, you're like, man, like, I feel like you have to spend time with them. It's miserable. And it's the same thing with the Lord. And I never felt like I had to spend time with Him. Like, I had such a deep desire to spend time with Him because I had tasted and seen, like, the Lord is good. He had changed my life, and I had experienced Him in His presence, and I was wrecked after that. Never could go back. You know, after hearing His voice or Him showing me that He cares, like, how could you ever walk away from that? Why would you ever want to? And so for me, it was discipline as far as, you know, your flesh wants to go out and hang out with people your age, but at the same time, I was just like, that's nothing in comparison to what I've experienced with the Lord. So I don't know that it was ever really difficult for me.
And I think that's the hardest thing to explain until people get that relationship. They don't understand it. That was the way it was for me. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize until, so You're lucky that you realized that in your 20s. I was 47 years old before I realized the difference between religion and relationship. It's one thing to believe in Jesus and to believe he died on the cross. It's one thing to have another thing to have him intimately in every part of your life.
Right.
To have him speak to you, it's just, I know what you mean. That's, the same.
I think that the reason that is, though, a lot of times for people is because, like me, they feel a certain way about themselves. And to allow the Lord to come so close to you and so personal, that would mean, exposing the inward and exposing who you are. And I think that that's scary for a lot of people. It's not beyond, I know the Bible says it's not so far across the sea that you can't get to it, or so high in the heavens that you can't reach it. Like, the Lord is near and he's close, and he's wanting and desiring relationship with every single person, no respecter of persons. And I've done nothing to deserve it. Even all the times, the discipline that I've had, staying in my apartment and, not going to these different places and drinking, like, that doesn't qualify me necessarily for the Lord to love me more. He loved me when I was at that party that night and said, I want nothing to do with you. Even in that sin and rebellion, he's a merciful God. It just, you do have to come to a point where you say enough is enough. And I did. And I said, enough is enough, and I'll stop running. And when I did that, he came in like a flood. And I think he awaits the opportunity to do that in every single person's life. I believe that.
I do too. And today you're living free.
So free.
And so how many drugs are you on right now?
Zero.
Mm-hmm. And you have a job and a career, and you also lead, along with another lady from church, you lead a Living Free class.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have groups of women that come in, and they just speak about things that they've been through and try and get free the same way we did, which is renewing your mind and teaching them about the Word and doing a little bit of counseling if they need it. And
Well, I'm so thankful that you do that and you give back like that. One of the things that you have said to me that I'm going to bring up, that you've told me on one of our many talks, was you said that there was a time that you just searched, right? You searched the internet and you would read testimonies and watch videos, and you would go to the library and get books. And can you tell us a little bit about that? I mean, I kind of said it, but...
Yeah, it was exactly that. I mean, I was in hot pursuit of getting well. Like, if I seen self-help signs in the stores, I always wanted to figure out, I was trying so desperately to figure out why it was the way that it was. Because I've heard people over the years would tell me why I was the way that it was, put labels on me or try and guess things, and I really wanted to figure it out. I'm like, why does my brain function like this? Why do I feel like this? So I would go to the store and I would sit in the aisles with books, reading through. I went out and bought big workbooks and would go home, and I went through this one. It was for sexual abuse, and it was this thick. And I went through the entire workbook. Every single night I would do a chapter and write pages upon pages, just searching, trying to figure out why. I even went to school. I was starting to go for social work, and in one period of time, trying to figure out in those classes, the psychology classes or the adolescent development or childhood development. I love those classes because I'm okay, why was I, thinking like that, or why did my brain develop like that?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I think too is that I want to tell the young girls out there or young men watching is it's a journey. I think about Andrea. She tells me about her journals even after she had started her journey, and we laugh about some of the stuff that she wrote in them. You're not going to be completely healed and whole overnight. Sometimes that does happen with the Lord, but it's in the journey. It's in those quiet moments. It's in that isolation sometimes when it's just you and Him. That's when you learn. and you teach him. It's just like any friendship, you know. You're instantly friends, you instantly feel the love, but the friendship grows just like it does with the Lord. The relationship grows every day on this journey. Every time you trust in him, every time you put your trust in him and you reach out to him, that relationship and that bond grows. One of the things, when I first met Andrea and took her to lunch, I didn't know what she just said about how when she was broken, she would sit and read and watch video testimonies. And I love how the Lord works and he brings everything all together. And so in this book that she's in of mine, Living Free, she shares her testimony. And that book opened up a lot of doors because it was God who nudged me to write this. It was God who nudged her to share her story. And that book opened up a lot of doors. And we've had speaking engagements together at women's conferences. And at one of the women's conferences that we had at our church at a breakfast, Andrea shared her story. And when she did, it caused another young lady in the church to hear it and come forward. And that is what this is all about. So if anybody out there listening has been through sexual abuse, or you're on and you feel like you're depressed or you don't have your identity, I urge you to seek the Lord. I urge you to reach out and seek someone. We're available. We are in Batavia, Amelia, Ohio, Solid Rock Church. There's a Living Free class every Thursday night that Andrea leads at 6 p.m. And you can also reach out on our Facebook page, LA May's Garden of Grace, and you'll be able to contact us if you would like to have Andrea or I come and speak to your group, or if you just need some encouragement one-on-one. And I just thank you for watching, and I pray that you be blessed.
Spirit, lead me where my trust is without border. Let me walk upon the water wherever you would call me. And take me deeper than my feet could ever wander. And my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without border. Let me walk upon the water wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without border. Let me walk upon the water wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior.